And now to our top stories. On Friday night, U.S. fighter jets struck a Syrian force that attempted to reach the U.S.-controlled eastern bank of the Euphrates River. This was the second attempt by Syria to cross the river, and it was mounted from the same location as the first time, outside the city of Deir ez-Zor. On Thursday evening, the U.S. military warned the Russian command against a repetition, stating, quote, Russian private military contractors remain in the area and are using local pro-regime troops to scout coalition positions. Last Tuesday, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister asked the United States to, quote, abandon unconditionally its plans for a strike against the Syrian government forces and Damascus, and any such unlawful use of force like that would be an act of aggression against a sovereign state, as defined by the UN Charter. Moscow states that the U.S. attack on Damascus is imminent, claiming that the U.S. will attack Syria because of the Assad's army's use of chemical warfare in eastern Ghouta. An evacuated eastern Ghouta resident had this to say.
الحين من كثرة القصف ومنعونا نخافوا إنهم هم مثلا ننضم للجيش السوري العربي السوري هنا. كمان نحن هنا درجة أنا جاي مع أبي مرافقة ما خلونا هنيك الجيش الإسلام هنيك ما خلونا نطالع لا أمي ولا أخواتي ما خلينا نطالع هذا أخواتي كبار ما خلونا نطالع غير أنا صغير إنه يعني أقول حتى ما ينضموا حتى ما يحكوا إنه شو في صاير بالغوطة.
The Russian staff first made warnings about this on March 13th. Chief of Staff General Gerasimov said that Russia would respond to a U.S. strike on Syria if the lives of Russian servicemen were threatened and would target any missiles and launchers involved. The Pentagon and National Security Council at the White House witnessed the fallout from two events. First, Assad's wins against the rebel strongholds in eastern Ghouta are boosting his regime, which is unacceptable in Washington. Assad has given the insurgent movement an incentive against continuing to fight. Depka weekly intelligence sources reported the arrival at the Russian Khmeimim air base of a helicopter designed to detect electronic command and control systems in addition to the radar of surface-to-air and air-to-air missiles. The number of helicopters the Russians have shipped to Syria is unknown. This package of sophisticated electronic devices is tailored to counter U.S. and Israel Air Force conducting strikes against targets in Syria. These stations are capable of disrupting any U.S. military activities from northern Iraq to the eastern Mediterranean. The Hamas military wing claims it has been launching a maneuver against the IDF and warned of unusual security traffic and explosions, saying that the exercise was part of the events in Gaza. The Palestinians are planning the next war in Israel, which they have named the Great March of Return, or the March of the Millions, which will begin on March 30th, the first night of Passover, the first night of the Jewish holiday of Passover, and continue until May 15th, Israel's 70th Independence Day. 4 members of the Hamas cut through the Gaza-Israel security fence, poured flammable materials on IDF equipment, and ignited it. Several Israeli soldiers arrived and beat out the fire, and Hamas members managed to escape. The IDF retaliated by bombing a Hamas compound in Rafah. The Gaza border is sealed by Israel and defended by the IDF against terrorist attacks. Hamas is planning to mass 1 million civilians who will crash the border and flatten it in defiance of Israel and its forces, and then could proceed to invade Israel. With us in the studio to discuss this is Dr. Martin Sherman, Director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me again.
So what do you think Hamas will do after this May showdown?
I think it will do everything that it can unless it's stopped. I think it will try to capitalize on any success it has to pressure and embarrass Abbas, Abu Mazen, who you know is planning a severe program of sanctions against Gaza, and they may try and use this march as a means to dissuade him from those sanctions.
Do you see heightened violence occurring in the areas outside the West Bank and Gaza?
Well, sure, if it succeeds. I think that if it's a success, many other sections of Palestinian society, both in Judea and Samaria, and possibly even in the Galilee, will seize on this. And I think in many ways this is a grave indictment of Israeli security policy. This morning on one of the morning television programs, General Yom Tov Samia, who was former head of command, said we really need some soul searching here to see how this situation has arisen and how we could let things reach this stage.
The Day of Rage on the eve of Passover is planned. Can you describe what this might look like?
Well, again, a lot depends on Israel's response. It could range anything between feeble demonstrations which fizzle out on the Gaza side of the border, or it could be massive riots which cross over and maybe even take over one of the Israeli settlements close to the fence. And I leave viewers to imagine what would happen there, with houses being razed, women being violated, residents being killed. So I really think this is a very dangerous situation that's brewing. It must be nipped in the bud with maximum force.
How do you think Israel can most successfully defend itself over the next few months?
Well, I think first of all, it must engage in a massive public diplomacy offensive, including it with Egypt, to generate the freedom of action that it needs to deal with this. Because basically this march is an act of war, and the participants in it should be treated as enemy combatants, with all the dangers attendant to that. Israel clearly has the physical means to stop it, but it needs the diplomatic freedom to allow it to use those means.
So the IDF retaliated to Hamas setting its equipment on fire by bombing a Hamas compound in Rafah. What repercussions do you think this could have over the long term?
Well, you know, in a logical world, it should be Hamas worrying about what repercussions there would be from the IDF from this action. So, you know, I think that I'm not sure that Hamas need an excuse for attacking us, but I think they should worry about the repercussions of trying to infringe Israeli sovereignty.
That's Dr. Martin Sherman. Thank you very much for your insight today.
Well, thank you for having me.
The Russian intelligence is preparing for war against Britain's military intelligence agencies. Putin is confident from his recent win to go against his British attackers. Depka intelligence experts believe the Kremlin will go for British economic interests and intelligence assets in the Middle East and will target the UK-US intelligence partnership. As former spy Skripal and his daughter Yulia, who were both poisoned by a nerve agent, remain in critical condition, London still has not come up with evidence to support the British government's allegations that Moscow and Putin were responsible for the chemical weapons attack. Depka intelligence sources report that the nerve agent is stocked by 20 different countries. Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson spoke at the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee meeting and accused Putin of, quote, ordering the attempted assassination of Russian double agent Sergei Skripal in a bid to drum up support for his re-election. Russian ambassador to the UK, Alexander Yakovenko, said that the UK has blamed Russia without any evidence in the spy poisoning affair. He claimed that Russian government did not have any connection to the incident, and the British government has refused to cooperate on the investigation.
Since the day of the incident, and we have not received any official information from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office or police on the investigation thereof. The British authorities refused to provide samples of the chemical substance. At which hospital are Mr. and Mrs. Skripal being treated? We don't have any information. What is their exact diagnosis, condition, and what treatment are they receiving? No information. Is the treatment the same as one provided to Surgeon Nick Bailey? No information. Why has the condition of Mr. Bailey improved while the Mr. and Mrs. Skripal remain in a critical condition? No question.
Theresa May initiated a diplomatic and intelligence war on Russia prior to Russia's elections. At a European Union Council meeting in Brussels, May stated that she would raise the topic of Russian aggression in the summit.
Now, Russia staged a brazen and reckless attack against the United Kingdom when it attempted the murder of 2 people on the streets of Salisbury. I'll be raising this issue with my counterparts today because it's clear that the Russian threat does not respect borders, and indeed the incident in Salisbury was part of a pattern of Russian aggression against Europe and its near neighbours, from the Western Balkans to the Middle East.
May hoped to receive support for sanctions against Russia. Many countries around the world expressed solidarity with the UK. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar had this to say.
Well, first of all, I want to say that we're all members of the European Union, 28 of us. We're all small countries in many ways, but there are big countries that surround us, and we sometimes come into conflict with them. Russia on security, issues with Turkey at the moment as well, issues with America on trade, and it's very important that we stick together. So, as a fellow member of the European Union, we're going to be in full solidarity with the United Kingdom.
Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz spoke at the council meeting and said this about the attack.
Wir verurteilen diese Giftgasattacke und wir sind solidarisch mit Großbritannien. Und insofern bin ich auch gespannt auf die Sitzung, wo die britische Premierministerin Theresa May auch uns alle darüber informieren wird und sicherlich auch die Informationen, die sie hat, mit uns teilen wird.
Turkish President Erdogan was allowed to conquer the Kurdish region of Afrin and drive out the U.S.-backed Kurdish YPG militia. Washington criticized the humanitarian violations that have been committed by the Turkish army, while Erdogan shot back that the U.S. is a detestable partner. Erdogan stated to the Justice and Development Party in Ankara that, quote, "If we are strategic partners, you must respect us and move along with us." He went on to say that the U.S. tried to deceive them, sending 5,000 trucks of weapons there and more than 2,000 trucks of ammunition. Foreign Minister Cavusoglu announced that Turkish Foreign Ministry Undersecretary would meet with the U.S. representative over the next several days.
Münbiş'ten başlayarak Suriye'nin belli bir bölümünü istikrara kavuşturmak. Bu da nasıl olacak? Burada bir çerçeve var, yine anlayış var. Öncelikle buralardan YPG çekilecek. Münbiş'ten örneğin çekilecek. Buraları kim yönetecek? Buraların güvenliğini kim sağlayacak? Bu konuda birlikte çalışacağız. Daha sonra arkadaşlarımız Washington'da bunun toplantısını yaptı. Bu çalışma grubunun yol haritasını biz eğer bir mutabakata bağlarsak o zaman anlaştık diyebiliriz. Şimdi bir anlayış var. Amerikalıların da teklifi var. Peki sadece Münbiç yeterli mi? Hayır. Münbiç'ten önce YPG çıkacak ve burayı istikrara kavuşturacağız. Münbişli insanlar burayı yönetecekler. Buranın güvenliğini onlar yine sağlayacaklar. Biz onlara yardım edeceğiz. Fakat Münbiç modelini diğer yerlerde de şu anda YPG'nin kontrol ettiği her yerde uygulayacağız.
Depka military and intelligence sources report that a U.S.-Turkish collision could occur if Erdogan captures the Kurdish town of Manbij in northern Syria. Turkish tanks moved into Afrin, and Erdogan has claimed that they will go into all the Kurdish towns east of the Euphrates River until, quote, the terrorist corridor is gone. He was threatening areas held by U.S.-backed Syrian Kurdish forces, which also host U.S. military bases. Erdogan claims that Turkey is ready to go into northern Iraq's Sinjar region, where Turkish Kurdish Workers' Party fighters are based. Erdogan is ready to cross the river and seize all the Kurdish regions of northern Syria and Qamishli. The loss of Manbij would put the U.S.-backed Kurdish gains at risk. Meanwhile, Turkey and Iraq are negotiating for Turkish troops to take bases in the Sinjar region of northern Iraq. Turkish forces could attack the Kurds in northern Syria, which could be of concern to the U.S. military in eastern Syria. A Turkish operation in Syria against Manbij or Kobani would put the U.S. forces at risk, and the 2,500 U.S. troops on 20 bases would be forced to condense into a smaller region. Manbij is the key to U.S. military presence in northeastern Syria and will be the focus of the operation when Turkey and U.S. officials meet in Washington. President Trump has chosen John Bolton as his third national security advisor. Trump wrote this on his Twitter account. I am pleased to announce that effective April 9th, 2018, John Bolton will be my new national security advisor. I'm very thankful for the service of General H.R. McMaster, who has done an outstanding job and will always remain my friend. There will be an official contact handover on April 9th. Bolton is the former U.S. ambassador to the UN during the Bush administration. Bolton has often spoken in favor of the U.S. using its military power to remind other countries that the U.S. is still the strongest powerhouse in the world. He's a proponent of preemptive military strikes on Iran and North Korea rather than wasting time building relations while the two countries are developing nuclear weapons. He also believes that Washington should have taken steps to remove Bashar Assad and has declared that the military expansion of Iran and Hezbollah in Syria must be stopped. Meanwhile, President Trump has decided to withdraw the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal. The information was given to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman when he visited the White House last week. Depka sources report that Tehran could go into retaliatory action before President Trump makes a formal announcement. Tehran could resume uranium production at a greater speed than before and increase isotope uranium enrichment level from 3.67% to 19.75%. Tehran could reactivate the underground facility. Under the nuclear accord, enrichment was restricted to non-nuclear material. The Iraq water reactor could be restored to the production of plutonium, which is an alternative to uranium. Previously, Tehran was required to pour concrete into the core, but the International Atomic Energy Agency never verified this and later discovered that the concrete only reached the pipes leading to the core, which is easily removed. The reactor could be restored to plutonium production. The director of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, Abbas Saleh, claimed that the reactor was modified to support peaceful nuclear research and not produce weapon-grade plutonium, but admitted that this could be easily reversed. Tehran disputes its obligation to notify Iran's Atomic Energy Organization when construction begins on nuclear-related facilities. It also stands by its own interpretation of the prohibition not to develop missiles that have been designed to carry nuclear weapons. French President Emmanuel Macron rounded up a Defense and Security Council with ministers and senior officials after an Islamic terrorist shot and killed 4 people in southwest France. 15 people were injured after the attacker fired on police and seized hostages in a supermarket. The attacker, Redouane Lakdim, a Moroccan-born French national, was shot and killed during the raid. He had been living under surveillance by security for being connected to the Salafist movement. The Islamic State has taken responsibility for the attack. At the crisis meeting at the French Interior Ministry, Macron praised the police, especially the injured senior officer who put himself in the line of fire when he offered to replace the civilians who were held hostage.
Je veux ici saluer leur engagement et leur professionnalisme, mais aussi leur courage. Et particulièrement le courage d'un officier supérieur de la gendarmerie qui s'est porté volontaire pour se substituer aux autres otages et qui a été très grièvement blessé. Il a sauvé des vies et fait honneur à son arme et notre pays. Il lutte actuellement contre la mort et toutes nos pensées vont à lui et à sa famille. Nous avons depuis plusieurs années payé le prix du sang pour savoir la dangerosité de la menace terroriste. Nos soldats, à l'étranger, risquent leur vie pour réduire la menace venue d'Irak et de Syrie. Nos forces de l'ordre sur notre territoire ne comptent pas leurs efforts ni les risques pour identifier les menaces et les neutraliser.
The heroic officer passed away before Macron was able to honor him. And now for a roundup of this week's regional headlines, the news in brief. 2 policemen have been killed and 5 others wounded in a bomb attack in the Egyptian city of Alexandria. Footage from the incident shows a burnt car and smoke at the site. The state news agency has blamed the bomb on the Muslim Brotherhood organization. Last month, the Islamic State released a video warning Egyptians against voting and encouraging Islamists to attack security forces. The government claimed it would not impact the elections today.
الصوت زعيق وازاز اتكسر وبتاع طلعنا بسرعه بصيت وفي الشارع لقينا عربيات مولعه تفجير بس الازاز طبعا العماره كله اتكسر